Hi everyone, let's talk about limited liability companies, LLCs. I'd like to talk about today, this will be unscripted so bear with me. Today let's talk about why LLCs may not be the best choice for somebody just starting out in business. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Rob. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and before the military courts of the United States. And again, today we're going to be talking about whether or not limited liability companies are the best choice or the primary choice that a small business should make when looking to form a small business or a company. Now, when we're talking about limited liability companies, if you had an unlimited amount of money, if you had a lot of cash, a lot of capital, let's say, for instance, you were going to buy a franchise, and the franchise costs a couple of $1 million. Starbucks doesn't offer franchises usually to the public, but let's say McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. You had to put up a lot of money, a couple of $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. Then you would be seriously considering either a limited liability company or a small corporation, an S-Corp. Now, before I get too far into this video, I'm talking, as I said, as an attorney that's licensed to practice law in Massachusetts. Your jurisdiction may vary. If you were a client of mine and you came in to talk to me about limited liability companies and your choices, this is kind of the conversation that we would have. This is the discussion that we would have. Whether or not that choice would be the correct choice for you. And I see a lot of videos on YouTube and people that might not even be attorneys are pushing limited liability companies like that isn't the choice of ownership, isn't the first concept that would pop into my mind. It would be whether or not the business idea that you're looking to start is a good concept, whether or not it's a proven concept, or at least whether or not it's a concept that you could get off the ground and start making money in a relatively short amount of time, a few months or so. So we're talking, let's say, hypothetically, starting a landscaping business. Now, with a landscaping business, you're going to have to buy lawnmowers. So a good lawnmower, a commercial lawnmower, might cost $5,000 or $6,000. Get a couple of those. But would you start off, so this is the analogy I want you to think about. Would you start off a landscaping business thinking about how you're going to get your customers, what equipment you're going to have, or would you start off thinking about how am I going to get my first customer? So if you have one or two customers, you don't need a $5,000 or $6,000 lawnmower. You just need a push mower that you might be able to get for $300, $400, $500 or somewhere around that area. So should you start thinking about forming a limited liability company before you have a business concept, before you have customers, before you have clients? You answer that question to yourself. Personally, my personal opinion is if I was starting a business, I wouldn't be thinking about how I'm going to form a company, so the legal entity for that business. I would be thinking about how am I going to make money? How is the money going to come in? How am I going to get clients? How am I going to get customers? What am I going to sell them? Think in those terms first versus the legal terms. How am I going to protect myself from liability? Yes, you should be thinking about how you're going to protect yourself legally if you form a business. My question to you to think about really seriously is a limited liability company the best choice to make if you don't have an established business? Is that the first thing that you should do? Now, what do limited liability companies do? How can they help you in your business itself? They can protect you from liability, some liability, and I'll give you some examples. And they have some tax benefits. And I won't get into the tax benefits, but as an attorney, I really enjoy tax law, and I haven't done any videos on that. And usually I'm doing videos on motivation and success and mindset and developing yourself as a person. And today we are talking about limited liability companies, which I have some experience in. That's why I want to give that experience to you. So what we're talking about right now is the concept of shielding yourself personally from liability. So let's get back to the landscaping example. If you had a landscaping company, there's some good opportunities for getting sued in that business. For instance, let's say you have a lawnmower and you're out mowing a customer's lawn, and all of a sudden you roll over a rock inadvertently, and that rock goes out the chute of the lawnmower and hits somebody in the chest, and it causes them an injury. Would a limited liability company shield you from personal liability if that person who got hit by the rock decided to sue you? It might, if the limited liability company was in good standing, whether or not it was maintained regularly, yearly in Massachusetts at least. So that is another aspect of the limited liability company that I'd like you to think about, is that, one, the cost of forming a limited liability company. It's going to cost money to pay to the state, so it's at least $500 just for the application to form a limited liability company. It might even be more in your jurisdiction, or it might be more wherever you are. So you have that initial fee to just pay to the state. Then you're going to have to pay an attorney to form the limited liability company for you. They'll draft the documents, they'll tailor the documents to your needs, and that's going to cost $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 at least. Could be more than that. Probably not going to get it any cheaper than that. So right off the bat, you're looking at a $4,000 or $5,000 fee to form the limited liability company. In a business, in a small business, I'm not talking about, again, the big franchises that you might want to buy with a bunch of people and shipping in to be able to afford something like that, or taking out a loan to be able to buy a franchise like that, or an existing business that you want to pay for. We're talking about a small business, like a landscaping business, or let's say, even if you had a YouTube channel, you would still have some expenses, cameras, microphones, lighting, marketing costs. All that stuff comes into play when you're thinking about the economics of forming a limited liability company versus not forming a limited liability company. And again, you have two benefits, two main benefits, and one is, again, the liability. It protects a business owner from being personally liable for anything that might happen within the business. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, because outside the business, it will not protect your assets. So it won't protect your home, your personal home. It won't protect your car. It won't protect money in the bank. It will if you get sued as your limited liability company. We'll get into that because I don't want to confuse you, but let's think about the limited liability company right now. You have your limited liability company, you get sued, it's in good standing. The person who sues you is only going to be able to go after the assets that are inside the business. So if you have, going back to the landscaping business, if you have your truck registered under the name of the limited liability company, it's not going to be, that's the only thing that's going to be attachable. if you get sued and that's the only asset you have. If you have money in the bank, a checking account, which you should have under the name of the limited liability company, then that asset would be taxable in a lawsuit against the limited liability company. So that's good in a way. But this is the point I would really like to make, is why would a person spend the money on a limited liability company when you have a limited amount of funds, and you would want to spend those funds really you would want to spend that capital on capital improvements like buying new lawnmowers, buying equipment, buying trailers for your equipment, buying advertisement, marketing your business. Instead, you're spending $5,000 right off the bat forming the limited liability company, which is an expense, not maybe is as expensive, but it's a yearly expense that you're going to have to come up with. And this is the real point of this video, is that you could buy insurance for the business and skip the limited liability company and the $4,000 or $5,000 price tag, and, in my opinion anyway, get more benefit from it. So let's go back to the landscaping example again. You don't have a limited liability company, let's say, hypothetically. One of your workers rolls over rolls over a rock, a stone. That stone gets discharged, hits somebody in the chest, they fall down, they get injured. It's not a life-threatening injury, but they had to spend a couple of days in the hospital and lost a month of work. So there's some damages and some liability there. If you had a limited liability company, you could still get sued. Your assets in the limited liability company would be taxable, and you would have to pay for an attorney to defend you in the lawsuit that somebody would get from getting hit by the rock. Compare that to what would happen if you had insurance. If you had insurance and that insurance covered that negligent act, let's say the rock going out of the lawnmower and hitting somebody and causing injury, the insurance would pay for your attorney to defend the lawsuit, and if there was a judgment against you, would pay for the judgment if you had enough insurance anyway. So do you see the difference where you might have to pay a couple of $1,000s a year or so, maybe even a little bit more, I don't know, because I'm not an insurance agent, I'm not selling you insurance, and I'm not selling you limited liability companies. I'm just giving you some ideas of what you should be thinking about as a potential small business owner, instead of rushing out and saying, the first thing I need to do is form a limited liability company. If I don't have a limited liability company, what can I do? Well, this is what you can do. You can buy insurance and start business right away and save that money and put it into your business. And when you get bigger, form a limited liability company and use that limited liability company to protect yourself and your assets from lawsuits. Now, here is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. This is what a lot of people, it doesn't even cross their mind when they're thinking about limited liability companies. And that is, you get sued, you have a limited liability company, good. It protects the assets within the limited liability company. So you have a car, you have a truck, you have some landscaping equipment, all that is somewhat protected in the limited liability company. It's within there. If you have a lawsuit, all those assets are attachable, but the assets outside the limited liability company, if the limited liability company is in good standing and it's been maintained, those assets are not attachable. So you have a house, first you have your limited liability company here with all the assets in there. Then you have your personal assets out here. So you get sued, these personal assets are not attachable because you have a limited liability company. So you have a house, you have a car, you have whatever, a boat, you have a vacation house. Those are protected somewhat from your limited liability company. However, let's say you get into a car accident without, let's forget about the limited liability company. You get into a car accident. You have your personal car. You're driving your personal car. It has nothing to do with the limited liability company. And you get into an accident and you get sued. The insurance doesn't cover all of the accident, and there's a judgment against you. Let's say for $10,000. The attorney that got the judgment against you over here in your personal assets is going to look for other assets to satisfy that judgment. It's going to look at your the assets in the limited liability company. Those are not protected from your personal liability. These assets in the limited liability company are not protected from any negligence acts that you commit as someone outside the limited liability company. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. So that's not a drawback of a limited liability company. It's just something to think about. Whereas people think that a limited liability company is some magic bullet that will protect you from everything. Just like people think that living trust will protect them from Medicaid or lawsuits, or it doesn't necessarily provide those benefits, a living trust, but that's for another video. So think about what we have talked about today, and when you're thinking about forming a company, ask yourself the questions that we've raised in this video, and see whether or not you think for yourself you have to go and form the limited liability company. I hope you got some value out of this video. My name is Rob. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Thank you to all the people who have subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.